Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here. I am so excited for today's video for a few reasons. First of all, this video is kicking off the Best of 2021 series. This is a series I do every year on my channel where I talk about the absolute best of the best, my favorite makeup that came out throughout the year. Today's video is also really exciting because I am sponsored by ColourPop again. I had the opportunity to do a sponsored video with ColourPop last month when they were releasing all of their Cyber Monday deals, and that video went so well that they offered me another opportunity for a sponsored video, and this is really awesome. You know, if you watch my channel, I love ColourPop makeup. I talk about them all the time. I do tons of reviews. It's definitely a big part of my channel and also just a big part of what I enjoy as a makeup lover. It's also what brings a lot of you to my channel in the first place. It's really cool, of course, to be able to work with a brand that I love so much, and I just cannot thank you enough for just helping make all of these really cool opportunities come true for me. So thank you to you, thank you to ColourPop for being such a great partner. And let's talk about my top 10 ColourPop palettes that released in 2021. You know, ColourPop stays releasing so many products throughout the year. And you know, they come out with a lot of great stuff. So it was really difficult to pick a top 10. I typically work on my lists for way longer than you may deem necessary. After weeks of going over and over these lists, pulling out my palettes and re-swatching everything, I have finally settled on my top 10 ColourPop palettes of 2021. All of these palettes have been previously swatched and reviewed on my channel. I will link all of the videos down in the description box. If you see any of these palettes that really pique your interest, you want to see swatches, tutorials, comparisons, or hear more in-depth thoughts on the formulas inside, go and check the description box and I will have a video waiting there for you. Starting with number 10, you may find this an odd choice, but just hear me out. I have the High Tide palette as my number 10 palette. This may seem an odd choice if you watch a lot of my videos because you'll know this is really not my type of color scheme. I don't really gravitate towards an all blue look. Now when I do wear a blue on the eyes, these are the type of colors I'm going to go for, but I always pair shades like this with something a little bit more neutral, a little bit more warm, orangey brown type of feel to get the look that I like. Even though this isn't a palette that I personally have used the most and gravitated towards, I think that this was a really important release. People had been begging for this turquoise teal monochromatic palette for a really long time. The High Tide palette really fills a gap that's existing in the ColourPop palette line. I'm so glad they made this. I think it's really well done. We have a great variety of depth and I absolutely love this packaging. Something about this just really calls to me. It fits the shades inside so well. The theming, the artwork, everything about this is really well done. I think this is an exciting release. They needed to make this palette and that's why it's in my number 10 spot. Now in my 9th place spot we have the So Very Lovely palette. This one really grew on me. When I first saw it, I didn't think too much of it, but the more that I used it, the more that I liked it. This has such a user-friendly mix of softer colors and a couple of really fun bright colors in here. The addition of the matte coral and the matte bright lavender here in the center really make this palette for me. It has a nice mix of both mattes and shimmers. We have a mix of neutrals and colors. I'm a sucker for purple. It's my favorite eyeshadow color, so the fact that there's a lot of great purpley shades in here really draws me into this color scheme as well. And honestly, the more that I used this, the more I found myself thinking that this is what I wanted the Wild Nothing palette to be. This also ended up being a really nice little travel palette for me. I know that I can reliably get both neutral and a little bit more fun, colorful looks from this palette without having to think too hard about pairing my shadows and bringing tons of palettes, the So Very Lovely palette was kind of a sleeper for me, and it ended up really being one of my favorites from ColourPop this year. In the number 8 spot, we have the Sonic Bloom palette. First glance, I love this packaging, and I think that this palette would have ranked even higher in the top 10 if we had seen a little bit of this navy and emerald color scheme coming into the shades in here. If these two shades here were replaced by an emerald green and navy blue, this palette probably would have shot way up to the top half of this ranking. I mean, 8th is still pretty respectable, especially considering that there's over 100 ColourPop palettes to choose from, so anywhere in the top 10 is pretty respectable in my opinion. I love the addition of some shifty duochrome shades in here. This also has a nice mix of neutrals and colors, but this one's a little bit richer, more jewel-toned colors than the So Very Lovely palette, which is really my preference. I love a good, rich jewel-toned shade. A lot of people were drawing comparisons between Sonic Bloom and the Good Sport palette, which makes sense why I would like this one so much. The Good Sport palette is one of my all-time favorite palettes ever, not just from ColourPop, so it makes sense if this one has a similar color scheme that I would be very drawn to this as well. Our first collaboration palette is showing up here in spot number 7. Now, this is not an intellectual property that I am a big fan of. I am purely placing this here because I really like the shades. I'm talking about the Mandalorian palette. This is the second Star Wars collaboration. ColourPop did the Baby Yoda palette, the child palette last year. This year they have the Mandalorian. And I gotta say, I really like this color scheme. We have these murky, swampy neutrals. I love a good mustard shade. We have some really, really gorgeous greens and grays. They fit the theme, but they're also really different for ColourPop. There's a richness and a sultry, smoky, almost grunginess to this color scheme that I really like. I find very exciting. I know a lot of other people are looking for a color scheme like this too. The packaging is nice. It's well done. I'm not really here because I'm a Star Wars fan. I haven't even watched The Mandalorian, although we did just get Disney Plus, so, you know, don't yell at me. But I do really like this palette. I just like the shadow shades inside. In 6th place, I have a palette that I feel is very underrated, which I understand because it is a neutral palette, but I think that this is such a cool take on a neutral palette. It's definitely neutral with a twist. I'm talking about the Lust for Dusk palette. This has such an interesting mix of shades and textures. We have some warm tones, some cool tones, a great variety in general. We have light, medium, and deep shades. We have mattes and shimmers. You've got some oranges, some purples, some grays. There's a duochrome. There's just so much going on in here that sets this apart from a lot of other more neutral palettes in my collection. I definitely think that this Lust for Dusk palette deserved more hype than it got, and I think a lot of people could find this palette really useful in their collection. Now, with so many palettes to choose from in the makeup world, I think that companies need to find a way to put an interesting twist on neutrals, and I really feel like the Lust for Dusk palette nailed that. We're moving into the top half of the ranking now. In 5th place, it's the only mega palette that's making an appearance in this ranking. You probably aren't surprised if you watch my channel. My 5th place spot goes to It's a Mood. Like I mentioned previously, I love rich jewel tones. I love having a variety of colors. I love having a lot of different depths and tones to pick from. And this palette has been an absolute hero for my comparisons this year. These 30 shades have covered so much ground in my collection. I just absolutely love how well-rounded this palette is. And you know I really love this palette because this one has some pressed glitters. I'm typically very turned off by palettes with glitter in them, but this one's just so good that it doesn't even matter. That's real love right there. That is true love. My fourth place palette is another collaboration palette. This palette really changed the game for me, and honestly, this Tinkerbell collaboration palette, it's called Sprinkle a Little Magic. This was such a turning point for me as far as really embracing my love of green. For a long time, I was very scared of green eyeshadow, and there were a couple of palettes that came out this year that really helped me turn the corner on green. It's not that I'm no longer afraid of green. I actively love green eyeshadow now. This palette definitely gets partial credit for that. Everything about this is just beautiful and exciting to me. I really like the layout with the matte on the four corners anchoring the palette here, and then we have a really great variety of greens. This is a green palette with a pop of neutral. It really fits the Tinkerbell theme. The packaging is beautiful, the textures in here are beautiful. If you want to hear me rave more about this palette, go and watch the review. I was in love with it then, and I am in love with it now, and that's why it's my fourth place palette. If you watch my channel a lot, then I bet you can already guess what my top three palettes are. In third place, I have the Limoncello palette. Everything about this is pretty close to perfection for me. I love this updated packaging that's a little bit more weighty, a little bit more luxurious feeling. Of course, the artwork is beautiful. It's giving me Italian villa in the summer. The palettes that have the larger eyeshadow pans, like this Limoncello palette, like the Tinkerbell palette that we just looked at, the formula is just absolutely gorgeous. It blends like a dream. I really like the ColourPop formulas across the board, but there's something really special about these shadows in the larger pan eyeshadow palettes that are just extra silky smooth, performing like such a high-end product. Of course, I love the shades in here. I'm a big fan of yellow eyeshadow, and I like the way that the yellow is paired with some greens and blues, with a lot of nice toasty neutrals. This is the type of color scheme that I'm gonna gravitate towards regardless of the season, regardless of the occasion. I feel like I get a lot of different looks, but I don't ever struggle to combine the colors. Beautiful inside and out. I love the Limoncello palette. It just makes me happy inside. Obviously, you knew there was gonna be a purple palette in here, right? In second place, I have this luscious little purple 9-pan palette. This is the Or Kid You Not palette. We have some really rich, regal purples. I think this is what a lot of people wanted the wine palette to be. I love the balance. I love the shades. I love the theme. I lived in Hawaii for a while, and orchids are really commonly used for leis, and they really have this rich purple, just royal, luscious feeling to them. I know I'm very nostalgic about my makeup, but I always think about those Hawaiian leis whenever I'm using this palette. And you know, I love purple. I'm never gonna be mad at a purple eyeshadow. The only way I could love this palette more is if it was in cardboard packaging. But other than that, the shades, the themes, everything about it, just definitely on point for me. Okay, it's time to reveal my number one pick. I believe that this is the absolute best palette that ColourPop released this year, and it's the Lush Life palette. This is the palette that I'm wearing today on my eyes, of course. I thought about wearing a different one to throw you off, but this is my number one pick. This is such an exuberant palette. We have this stunning tropical theming. We see the same colors carried inside to the shadow shades. This is hitting all the right marks for me. We have an even split of mattes and shimmers. We have a great balance between some neutrals and some colorful shades. These are a little bit out of my comfort zone, so it might seem surprising that I picked a palette that has so much blue and green in here, but this is just the perfect way for me to wear these types of shades. Like I said when we were talking about the High Tide palette, I really like to pair warm neutrals with blues, and these blues and greens have such a richness. They're so bright, they stay so true to color on the skin. This palette manages to be both in my comfort zone and inspiring me to push out of my comfort zone at the same time. It's beautifully curated, it performs well. I feel like I get so many different looks every time I use this palette. I love seeing these more unique color schemes come from ColourPop. I hope that we continue to see more and more palettes like this that just have such a bright, joyful, inspiring vibe. That's why Lush Life is my #1 ColourPop palette of the year. I do have an affiliate code for the ColourPop site. If you decide you want to go check out any of my favorites, you can always use my code. It's just Amanda, my first name, and that will save you 10% on most purchases on the site. Just keep an eye on your cart total because you can't typically pair a code with an existing sale, so I want to make sure you get the best possible deal. Huge thank you again to ColourPop for sponsoring this video and for being such an awesome partner. And an even bigger thank you to everybody who watches my videos. I appreciate it, whether you're just passing through or you're leaving a comment or whatever it may be. I'm glad you're here. I always love to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave a comment with all your thoughts down below. Tell us what your favorite ColourPop palettes are. What were your top releases from 2021? I always love to hear what you think. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! My makeup and my earrings say tropical, but my fuzzy sweater and fuzzy cozy socks say it's definitely December. This is all just wishful thinking. We're doing aspirational makeup today. Okay, focus. Do you feel like spam calls are getting worse? Have you guys had a lot of spam calls lately? There's only a handful of people that call me to actually talk to me. Most of the time, just text me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna have some more coffee. It's fine. It's doing great. I'm doing great. It really felt that part sounded weird. This has gotten away from me. My coffee cup is so gigantic. It's like the size of my head. I was dragging a little bit and I knew I needed to film this video, so my husband made me this big, gigantic cappuccino because he's literally the best. He's the best human. And he doesn't watch my video, so he's never going to know that I said that. Just going to talk about him behind his back because he's my best friend and I love him. That's so cheesy. A lot of people were me thinking about Good Sport and how we can't buy it anymore. Recaffeinate, recharge. In the seventh. What? Okay, it's fine. The shadows with it. Did I already say that? I feel like I did. I'm such a bad influencer. I always forget to do the use my code thing, use my affiliate code. I'm so bad at that. Half the time I have to go back in editing and add it in because I'm so excited to talk about this stuff that I forget to do the business part of it. So don't forget to use my affiliate code. Nailed it. I did not think I was going to make it through that. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm feeling pretty tired. Hopefully this video isn't a million years long, but I'll tell you, it took me almost an hour to film it. That just shows you how ridiculous I am. If you're ever like, wow, these bloopers are long, you have no idea. I hope that you're having a wonderful holiday season, and if you are not currently celebrating a holiday season, then I just hope that you're having a great day, and I appreciate you, and I think you're the best, and I just absolutely love your face. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye!